Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Inside Track podcast. Got two fabulous guests with us today. Simon, you're back on for your second appearance, which is, or maybe even third now, actually. So welcome, Simon from Tima. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yes, third appearance, very excited.
Awesome. And Aary, this is your first, so welcome to the party. Now, just before we get started, it's always a good idea or a good thing for our listeners to understand who Aary is, what's your background. Obviously, you're now the owner of the Anytime Fitness in Bermondsey, but just to give us a bit of a background as to where you come from and how you got into Anytime Fitness.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So my background is predominantly in franchising itself.
Okay.
So I've been doing franchising since I was I want to say 16. It started off with my mother opening a few nurseries and me doing that whilst I was in sixth form in university with her, and then just coming straight out of uni into it as well. I had a small stint in financial services and banking and stuff, but that wasn't as glamorous as the time I spent in the nurseries. And now the Anytime Fitness is our first one. We've been in the network with Anytime for about 2 years.
Right.
I think, and we opened Bermondsey as of last week. So yeah, it's been.
How's the pre-sale gone?
Yeah, really, really well. I mean, we were very lucky to have the assistance of this lovely man, Simon, with us. Simon and I have known each other for a year now. We were actually introduced outside of Anytime Fitness. So when we were formally introduced, it was a bit like, it's all good. We already know who we are. But it went really well. We pushed quite hard. We did significantly better than what we told sort of the bank and stuff that we do. So bankers were happy and things like that. I think there's always a level of with personalities like Simon and mine, there's always a level of we can always do better. But I think stopping now when we're opening and reflecting backwards and going, we had a really, really good crack. And we're going into 2 really major selling periods. December traditionally is slower than other months because everyone's going away, but we've got that trajectory of a new gym carrying us forward. And then January is obviously your Jan and Feb rush. So yeah, I'm really, really happy with how it's come so far.
It's actually quite a nice time to do pre-sale if you can get it in before and get open before that sort of December Christmas period, because then you can't pre-sale through December, it just doesn't work. But if you can get yourself open, you almost have a soft opening, gives you that chance to get over the niggles, and then like you say, you move into January, which is then you get a second, almost like a second pre-sale again, because it's everyone's buzzing, so you get this double hit, and it's probably about the only time of the year you really get a chance to do that. So I think timing seems perfect. Which is great.
100%. And goodness, you are right about those little niggles that come up. And so we are, we are facing those at the moment and getting over them. But I'm so much happier that it's now rather than in Jan with 200-300 more members than we have currently.
So there's always a shower goes down, or a toilet that breaks, or kit that needs servicing because it hasn't quite worked. There's always those with pre-sale. It's the norm. Now we'll come on to the process, obviously, in terms of what you guys did, because I think that's a really, really good thing to talk about, Simon, because obviously what you're doing with the pre-sales. But just before we jump into that, obviously you did nurseries and the other franchising stuff, Aary. What made you go, right, we'd like to go into the fitness side, and why particularly Anytime Fitness? Because obviously there's quite a few out there. So what made you think, they're the ones for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's 2 parts to it. I think why AF and then why gyms in general. So COVID, the short answer. I think that really, really indicated, as business owners, we have to be as strategic as we can. And COVID basically had a really big impact on what we were doing. Costs of labor, cost of raw materials, cost of staffing, cost of recruitment, everything went through the roof. And unlike a gym, with nurseries, and I'm sure, you guys may have or may not have children, but the way it works is you've got to have qualified staff members, a certain amount of staff per children, things like that. And when you run a nursery that's 108 places and another one that's 98 places, it's not exactly the smallest staff pool in the world. So that was just becoming quite difficult. And so that took our focus away from basically wanting to open any more nurseries.
Gotcha.
And we just thought, let's look into different things that we're doing, and different things are available actually. So, franchising, because we franchise the nurseries, the natural next place to look was franchising. I think I sit quite comfortably in the franchise market, understand how franchisors work. And then we explored everything. I mean, we explored all of the major gym ones, obviously Anytime Fitness included, as well as F&B, labor, different things that we were looking into. I mean, we went from Domino's to Taco Bell to Costa to McDonald's to Snap to Golds to Energy to Anytime Fitness. And the reason we chose Anytime Fitness is just because the model worked the best. They were very, very sure on what your costs were to start a gym, very sure on what your performance was, very sure how much the brand could carry you in terms of getting that good performance and getting good returns out of it. And I sit back here 2 years later, a week after opening, and can genuinely say it's all true. We were pretty much on the ball with all the costs that we thought we were going to have, and we had a delay for 18 months. So even carrying, a team for an extra 3 months, carrying additional surveys and this for the extra 18 months, it was obviously a lot more out of pocket expenses than we discovered, but we were still on the market with what we thought we'd do. And then the same with the brand reputation. They had the best brand reputation. I think they still do. And yeah, a lot of members just come to us because of the fact that they've gone and had such a great experience at Anytime Fitness elsewhere, have moved to London, and now they're local and they're super, super happy to come on board.
It's great to hear that you did so much due diligence, though, Aary, because it's. I've worked with a few franchises. Obviously, I've worked with a few franchisees, and it's quite often when it fails or it doesn't go right, it's largely down to they haven't done their due diligence. They haven't really, because there's certain fitness franchises that really you need to be an on the ground manager as the owner. You're on the ground managing. Some franchisees, like Anytime, don't need that in a way. You get a manager in there and you can manage it from afar, but you've got to do your due diligence, and you've got to don't always listen to what you're being told by the franchise, or find the detail, find the and I think because you've got that experience of franchising, you knew what to look for and what not to, and it just give you that that heads up, because it is difficult. I mean, a lot of franchises that we speak to don't realize how much it costs to do pre-sale.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. The one to be fair, I said a small fib earlier. I think the one budget we went out of was pre-sale, but I think with pre-sale it's great because you can actually monitor and track where your returns are coming. So you're putting more money into digital, you're putting more money into physical prospecting, you're putting more money into things like Tima or other things where website and graphic designers and this, that, and the other, and you can actually see the conversions. And Simon has this phenomenal sort of way that he tracks the conversions and has this whole algorithm that he's created. And it's really great because when you get someone like Simon on board and he goes ahead and breaks it down for you, you can then take those teachings away and go, well, actually, to go ahead and support this, we need to put money here. And it works really well. But I mean, to bring you back on the point of doing due diligence, just a fun fact out there, we took 17 initial meetings with franchisors.
Wow.
And we finally landed on Anytime. So I tell everyone that because, I personally don't make quick decisions. When it came to picking my kit provider, I went back and forth for 4 months, and Simon was part of that conversation where he just went, "You're going to have to make the decision for yourself." It took 4 months of my time to try and pick a kit provider. So yeah, I mean, people, like you said, expect to come into a franchisor or franchise and expect everything to be laid out for them. Well, in actual fact, it's not the complete opposite, but it's not that easy. You've got to come in and put work in as if you were an individual entrepreneur and do your thing. And yeah,
it's still your business, isn't it, Aary? That's the thing. Yes, you've got their brand. Yes, you've got all the SOPs and all that support. You've got they've got links to all the supplies that you need. But ultimately, the success is down to you and your team on the ground. Anytime don't come in and sell it for you. They don't. No. You know what I mean? They'll give you the support. They give you, but they're not there to run the business for you. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people make with franchising. They almost expect a business in a box and then it works. And it's not that at all. So yeah, no, it's great to speak to people. There's a couple of you guys in Anytime Fitness that have got this background, and it's great because you're not coming in blind, which is the biggest mistake for a lot of people when they join the networks.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I won't go into too much detail about sort of what things like commission structures and things like that are for the franchisor. But I mean, if I just make a comparison between what we were to pay, our nursery group and what we were to pay our gym group, for the support and for the payment that you give to Anytime Fitness, I think you're really getting the best bang for your buck. I think those guys try and keep the cost as low as possible for you, but then provide you with everything you might need. I mean, a famous thing, something I didn't even think about, things like health and safety. 6 hours before opening, and council goes, "Where's this, and this?" And we're like, "Oh my goodness, it's going to take weeks to make it all open tomorrow." And Anytime just go, "Oh, we've done it for you. Here you go." And you're like, yeah. So when it really counts, and just general day to day, and when it really counts, they're really there for you, which is a great feeling to have.
Awesome. Now, coming on to your pre-sale, because obviously it's really recent, which is great to have you on for that. In terms of the stuff that you and Simon did, now Simon may want to jump in here and sort of go, okay, what was the major challenges in terms of looking at it? Because obviously I know how Simon works. We've worked together for a long time, but what were the major things looking at it and go, okay, this is Bermondsey. What did you guys need to put in place to make this pre-sale work?
Yeah, so I think firstly the biggest benefit when it came to Tima, and especially between myself and Simon, is that actually, as of Simon and I actually met last week on Thursday, and that was a 1-year anniversary where we had first met. So that pub in Birmingham where him and I were at social, and then we met a year previously. I think that was so beneficial for me, because being a new person in the gym world, Simon and I basically spent 2-3 hours chatting about pre-sale, and I had no idea how valid it was until 9 months later when we're actually looking at it in person. It was so beneficial. So that chat stemmed everything. I think what's super important is when Simon and I sat together, I think the first thing Simon takes us through is all your different basically key factors, what's going to buy that membership and what's going to stop someone buying that membership. And then what we do is we go ahead through an entire strategy of eradicating all these barriers to entry and making sure that we focus on all the good points. We were very lucky because Simon spent a lot of his early career as well just down the street from where Bermondsey is. And down the street from where Richmond will be. So, he knows the areas very well. But that being said, I mean, if we were opening in Edinburgh tomorrow, it's not like Simon wouldn't know what's going on. And hence why our confidence lies in him and in Tima. And so that's what we did. I mean, Simon, you helped me out here, but we looked at everything from competitors to what our good pricing would be, what our structure should be, what our contract terms should be, and then just local partnerships and knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Bermondsey was very interesting because there's the stakes are just higher in the city. Obviously, the capacity for massive success is there because the foot flow is there. The affluence is there, the population density is there, all the rest of it. But also, it's very, very easy to get lost in the crowd in that sort of market. There's a lot of competitors, and you do have to find a way of cutting through. And I do think massively to Anytime Fitness's credit, that is a huge plus factor, particularly in this scenario, because you're not starting from scratch in terms of brand awareness, in terms of educating the market. That's kind of already been done for you. But what was interesting about Aary's site is that it's slightly, and I hope you won't mind me saying this, but it's slightly off the beaten path. It's a very residentially orientated offering, which, don't get me wrong, obviously we've done a great job on it, and we found a way through, but it doesn't necessarily lend itself to it's not a walk-in club, as I would have called it back in the day. Aary's not going to get 30 people walking through the door every day because they're just passing on their way to work or Tesco's or whichever. And then, of course, you've got the challenge of, okay, so with physical marketing, i.e. outreach, leafleting, all the rest of it, I want to go far enough to get the foot flow, but I want to go too far that I'm actually marketing for another gym. So that was part of the challenge as well. But effectively, we sat down, we looked at the profile, we looked at the demographics, we looked at the competitors, all the things that Aary said, and I think we did a good job in conjunction with the club manager as well, who's also very experienced and come to us from another gym, and put a bit of a strategy together. But I think what's interesting about Aary's situation specifically, and I hope you won't mind some of the detail here, but they had a delay. What was it, August, Aary, when you got told that there's going to be a few more months because of a leak? Is that right?
That was probably the last straw delay.
Right.
I'd say we so we had 2 inches of, I don't mind going to, we had 2 inches of water underneath the raised access flooring across 7,000 square feet.
Wow.
And that was May 22nd. And that was already after a 9-month delay prior to that to get the planning permission for 24-hour access. So we'd gone from a March opening to a May opening to an August to September to now November, and we finally actually opened in December.
When did your GM come on board?
So my GM came on board. Sorry, Simon, I'm interrupting your train of thought.
No, please do.
My GM came on board in May. And sorry, not in May. On the 1st of May or the 2nd of May, because the 1st of May was bank holiday. Yeah, on the 2nd of May he came on board, and yeah, obviously with our model we tend to bring GMs on board probably 3 months. 3 months before we start, and then the team 2 months before you open. So as you can imagine, we've been having him on our books for, I guess this is month 7 now. So yeah, good thing that I asked the bank for a little extra money in the get-go, so we were okay. But yeah.
Well, the thing is as well, though. Sorry, Simon. The thing is with pre-sale, if you get it right, like you guys have done, it sets you up for massive success going forward. So you sort of that cost is there, but you sort of go, actually, the benefits long term will claw that money back fairly easy if you have a good pre-sale. Sorry, Simon.
No, it's okay. So the reason I mentioned that is that where it was a bit of a stop-start nature with the project, obviously the timing of your prospecting is very important. Excuse me, I'm lucky enough to have worked on 19 pre-sales now, 6 of which directly for a company I was working for, and the others through Tima, 2 of which will be opening in January, 11 of which we've done in the last 16 months. Excuse me. And one of the things that I've found is a universal truth is that a prospect can be too old. It can also be too fresh, which is very interesting. But certainly once a prospect reaches a certain age, the conversion rate is very, very low. Don't get me wrong, at certain volume, there's still a value in that pool. But you're looking at conversion rates of single figures once a prospect reaches a certain point of maturity. So, of course, the timing of these things is pretty crucial. And to be in a project where it looks like all things are go, so we get prospects and then we have to pull back, all the rest of it. And again, apologies, Aary, if this is an overshare, but even to the point where there was a full team on the ground, which had to be pulled back, basically, because it was just too much too soon, given the delay to the project. So the stop-start nature of it, and the manager in particular, it's tough. It's hard from a psychological perspective to start working your way through the gears to then stall and have to start again. So it was definitely it definitely had its challenges from a marketing perspective. And actually, one of the nice things about working with Aary is that we have a relationship whereby if I see a red flag, I'll tell him. Some franchisees, you don't want to do it because they don't want to hear it, and it just sours the relationship. But I did say to Aary, I think it was September maybe, that I did a prospect profile and said, look, dude, you're not going to hit your target with this pool. It's not going to happen because of the profiling, because of the age, because of the type of acquisition, i.e., outreach or leafleting or online or whichever, and also looking at the number of duplicates, number of people that don't have a phone number, all these sorts of things. And I just said, look, if you want to be realistic about hitting your target, we need to get a lot more prospects quite quickly. And we actually went through a digital marketing agency who were very, very helpful. But even that was interesting as well, because, and again, I'm jumping a few chapters here, but we had to take a look at where we were after a day or two and decide whether or not to feed more prospects into that stage of the process, which ultimately we didn't, which proved to be quite a good decision. But again, sorry, we'll come on to that in a second, I'm sure. But certainly from the prospecting perspective, it wasn't without its challenges. And one of the things that I like to do during the phase is go and spend a day, or maybe not a day, but a few hours with the team, get a sense of their prospecting efforts, get a sense of the rapport they're building with the community, how effective they're being, what the quality of the prospect is going to be. And again, unfortunately, and obviously not naming names here, but unfortunately I had to message, well, we had a call afterwards, and Aary and I say, look, I'm lukewarm on this. So yeah, but look, I think the key is that, you have to recognize that beyond a certain radius, forget it, that they're not going to travel to your gym when they've got one on their doorstep. Obviously looking at, okay, so this is our target demographic, which for an Anytime Fitness is sort of mid-30s, young professionals starting a family, not afraid to spend a bit of money because they've got some disposable income, but equally don't want to break the bank on a gym membership. Okay, so those sorts of people, where are they? When are they there? How do we reach them? And one thing the club manager was very effective at was sort of local partnerships with local sort of trendy bars and restaurants and that sort of thing, because of course that's where they are on a Thursday and a Friday evening. And if you can, reach people through that medium on that restaurant's Instagram account or whatever it may be, that can be quite effective as well.
I was going to say, what sort of things did you do for that then? So he had these great connections with the bars, the restaurants, and so on. How did you then leverage that into leads? Because I think that's a lot of clubs don't do it very well.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. So I think, like Simon said, we're very, very lucky because our club manager, Danny at Bermondsey, he comes from a previous Anytime Fitness where he was also in a pre-sale position. And then he led that gym as an assistant general manager and then came on board to us as our general manager. And so what he did when he came in is he basically duplicated a model that he had in his brain of what he needs to accomplish. And we sat down together and we, went through expectations and went through, what I'm looking for. And then he pretty much had all the independence in the world to do his thing. And what he did is he went out there and he went to the local businesses on Bermondsey Street and, in London Bridge and Jamaica Road in Bermondsey and South Bermondsey and even into Elephant and Castle if need be. But like Simon said earlier, you don't want to encroach on another gym's territory that, you're not going to hit that market at all. And we just went to all local restaurants, bars, clubs, hospitals and just companies and just said, look, we're opening. Again, it's super hard when you have delays and you don't actually know when you're opening. So, although he's doing this in May and he's like, oh, we're opening in September. And then you pretty much go to them in September and they were like, I thought you were opening in September. It's next month. And then you do it again and again and again, where they're a bit like, we are happy to offer discounts. And we have some great companies like cafe shops, cocktail bars, restaurants. But to answer your question specifically, it's the companies and the corporates is how you generate those leads.
Gotcha.
Yes, you have the staff portfolios in these restaurants and these bars and clubs, but how many are you going to have? You're not going to have the 50 and 60 that we might have in a nursery, but you are going to have 10s and 20s. And when you get to companies, you're going to have sort of 30s and 40s and 50s, and that's when you get them to your database, you keep them on board, and you slowly then convert them. So when it came to whether Tima or us dialing out, and I'm sure we'll cover later how we differentiate who calls who, but it's them calling and saying, hey, well, we know you're an employee at Cafe Latino, would you like to get £10 off your membership a month because you're one of the first to trust us and because your owner wants to be partnered with us. So that's how we pretty much convert them.
I didn't know if you'd gone out to these guys and were doing outreach in their sites, because I've seen that a couple of times where you create a local, especially in like local cafes, that can work really well where you've got a relationship.
I think it's. Oh, sorry, Simon, go for it.
Thanks, Aary. I think the other thing that's worth as a bit of a tip for anyone listening is obviously if you can get into their socials, you then get their audience. So if you've got the local restaurant that's got couple of thousand followers, as soon as you get onto their feeds, and of course you've got to include here's a link to inquire or whichever, it's all well and good waving at people, but you've got to give them a call to action as well. But I think that really lends itself. The other thing, and I'm sure we may want to come back to this as well, but I don't want to forget this because I think this is really cool, is Danny also organised boot camps. So outdoor classes, which were led by the personal trainers wearing their Anytime tops, all the rest of it. I believe they were free. That anyone could just turn up to. And again, from a social media content, from a community building perspective, that was quite powerful. So there was definitely some sort of out of the box thinking, because again, like I say, the big thing for me for a city club, excuse me, it's just so hard to cut through the noise because it's so vibey, there's everything happening everywhere. It's very, very easy to get lost in the action. But if you can target places that people are naturally drawn to and looking at and put your messaging there, whether that's literally stood outside the cafe giving out leaflets or a link on their Instagram feed or whatever it may be, that can be quite an effective method. And in some ways, and I have said this to Aary before, I think the delays, whilst incredibly frustrating, may have lent themselves to that extra time to build that awareness and also a little bit of anticipation as well. But sorry, I know I've jumped slightly off topic there.
No. I agree though, Simon. It probably has helped in the long term, because I know when I've done pre-sales before, and I think I've done about 40 now, and generally what you try and do, you start your 3-month pre-sale then, but actually you're starting all your social content months before that, because what you're trying to do is slowly build up. We're coming. This is what's, And eventually then when you actually hit the ground and start doing the paid ads and everything else, people are actually aware of who you are. And it does make it does almost as soon as you sign the lease, there's something, start getting it out, start putting it out, and it builds up nice and slowly. But then when you do go live, people are expecting, and they're not going, oh, who's that? It's almost going, yes, I know who they are. This is great. They're coming soon, which is awesome. Just out of interest, in terms of, because it's obviously everybody at the minute is very much social media, and you guys have done a lot of outreach, which is really interesting. Now, I'm a massive believer in outreach still. I think not enough clubs do it. They don't get out of their clubs and into their communities and do that. Do you think that's had a massive impact on how successful your pre-sale was, Aary?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was thinking about another answer there, but no, absolutely. I think physical prospecting, I think there's nothing like it. I really think this is the whole franchisee against franchisee thing. You're going to have franchisees out there, and I know Simon and I can definitely have a few conversations, and they're all friends of mine, where they'll go out and they'll say, you know what, we'll get as many digital prospects as we want. We won't get any staffing right now. We'll go ahead and get everyone's names and details, and Tima will just take care of the entire prospect pool. And I think that's a great way to go. But then what we need to remember is that Tima usually do the pre-sale anywhere from a week to 4 weeks before you open. So to then recruit, hire, train all those staff members, including a really expensive position, your general manager position, and then all of those sales advisors who at the end of the day have to be salespeople, is really quite difficult. So I think doing that isn't the best way for us, and we definitely wouldn't do it. And so what we had to do is go ahead and get an entire pool of staff members from our general manager and a bunch of sales advisors, and just go out there and physically prospect. Wear a backpack, stick a giant flag out the back of it, grab some leaflets. If no one wants to talk to you with the iPad, just give them a leaflet. Put a leaflet in their hand, and that's it. But if you can get someone to stop, and you can get someone to go ahead and have a chat with you for 10, 20, 30 seconds, if more, that's amazing. Get their details, put them on the system, because when it comes to the 29th, the 28th, 29th, and 30th of October, when we started dialing those phone lines, we could pick up the phone and go, hey, Ryan, do you remember that we met so-and-so, and in the notes it has everything we spoke about? And they're like, oh, no way, how's it going?
It's so professional when you can do that. You can't buy that sort of, it's almost building that trust straight away by just saying, we met you at such and such, this is what we talked about. And they're like, wow.
Absolutely. And I think what's great is that a week before, and I'm sure we'll go into it, where we split up who we call and who Tima called. I think a week before, the first thing me and my team sat down and went, let's go through, we're all fairly intelligent people. We all have, generally good memories. Let's go through all these lists of names, all these lists of prospects, and let's go and identify every single person that you can remember having a memorable moment with. And we went through then, out of, thousands, there might have only been 200-300. But you can sure as hell count those 200-300 signed up, because you picked up the phone and you called them and you went, I remember so-and-so. Yeah.
So on that point, sorry, I think this is really interesting. So one of the things that I do, excuse me, obviously, Ryan, I'm a bit of a data head. Obviously, Aary's learned that over the last year as well. But I will look at so efficiency is just very important, particularly in pre-sales, and driving a conversion rate is very important as well, particularly from my perspective, because that's kind of the ROI for the client. I also very rarely get assigned all of the prospects. And again, I'm jumping the ship a little bit. Apologies, because we haven't spoken about the process yet. But the point is that I want to make sure I get prospects I can deliver a return on, because the last thing I want is a franchisee spending good money after bad, because they've spent money on acquiring rubbish prospects and then spent even more money on trying to convert the unconvertible. So looking at conversion rates on different pools of prospects is something I've been very close to for the last 12 to 18 months. Excuse me. And of course, outreach versus digital is a very hot topic, because digital is cheaper, quicker, and higher volume. So it has a lot of curb appeal, I suppose, from a business modeling perspective. The problem with digital, in my experience, is that there is quite a low ceiling on the quality of that prospect. Okay. Now you'll fairly consistently hit that ceiling. Okay. But you very rarely will break through it. Because generally speaking, so just to be clear about this is digitally acquired through paid ads, not organic. Your digital organic prospects are awesome. They always convert at a very high level. I'm talking about paid ad prospects. And again, it's one of several variables that affect the strength of the prospects, age of prospect being one of the top ones. But a digitally acquired prospect will go stale far quicker than an outreach prospect will. And the ceiling on an outreach prospect is much, much higher from a quality perspective. But also, I would say the floor is much, much lower. So Aary, again, won't mind me saying this, but they had a bad apple on their team. We had to just discount all those prospects because it's very, very clear that they were just Mickey Mouse, basically. Luckily, we were able to nip it in the bud quite quickly, and that was that. But you have that reality with outreach. With digital, you still have that reality to an extent. We worked with a club who, very unfortunately, they were using a digital marketing agency, and the agency didn't control the radius on the audience. So we're calling people in Scotland, trying to sell them a gym membership in London. So look, it can go wrong in all places, but I think the digital versus outreach, if I could acquire enough prospects in the space of time to keep them fresh through outreach, I would 100% do that. However, there are circumstances in which either it's not possible because there's only so many hours in the day, or it's so expensive that actually you run the risk of the ROI being impossible because you just spent so much on acquisition. So I personally advocate a hybrid to my clients. And exactly as Aary said, look, if your guys accrued them, you guys call them because you have that rapport and you have that consistency. However, fortunately for someone in my game, the reality is they will often form the minority of the prospects because, you get a team of 3 people out there for 8 hours, 50 prospects. If you want quality, is probably a reasonable number. And again, I would say that's the high end. It's more likely to be 20 or 30, whereas, a digital ad can acquire 100. So it's definitely a hybrid approach, but it's interesting that, and sorry to jump around a little bit, I promise we will take a few steps backwards, continue the journey, but I sat down with the new openings manager at Anytime Fitness last week, and we profiled all of the pre-sales this year, team or otherwise, because we're really keen to look at how we can make the model more efficient in 2025, because ultimately, even the top converting sites, they're converting at sort of 20-25%, which is considered fantastic during a pre-sale, but I want to get it to 30-40%, because if we can do that, it significantly reduces demand on prospects, which ultimately are what take the longest and cost the most. And part of that is just
that. If you're looking at only 25% and you want, I don't know what the average opening for Anytime is, 700,000, whatever it is, that's a serious number of prospects you've now got to generate. And if you can increase that conversion by 10%, it drops the reliance on the lead gen massively.
But it's interesting because that situation. Sorry, Aary, go on, please.
Yeah. No, sorry, I was just saying it's this whole quality against quantity situation.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do is accomplish, and what Simon's doing is definitely the right way to go, because what it does is it takes the onus off, the team doing, small details, but the team doing 30,000 steps a day, trying to get, those 50 prospects, to them actually only having to get 30 and doing less steps, but being able to look and target and go forth with their pitches with more, I guess, efficiency and fluency, rather than it just being this big, hello, customer service situation, how can I help you? Just splurting that out. It's more, hey, how's it going? I'm so and so and so forth.
Yeah. And just out of interest, Aary, did you have a pre-sale office? Because it's no, I was going to say it's very mixed. There's some people do, some people don't. I like them because you can get people in to come and see, and you've got that personal touch, but others don't. So you guys didn't.
Yeah, I think two of the things that, so my general manager came from that. Danny came from that environment where he did have a pre-sale office, and he was piggybacking on a second pre-sale just prior to coming over to us, whilst working his notice period. And so both of those things that he did had offices, and he came over to us, and that was one of his first questions. I just want to know, and it's very, very simple. It's, we're central London, we're zone 1. There's 2 things: location and real estate prices.
Yeah.
No one's going to pay £45 a square foot for a 3-month lease trying to get something out there. It's far too expensive, and the return on investment is something that you just can't measure.
And you can't put a cabin, can you, in a location like that either?
You just can't. And I used to think I'm a data guy. Simon's far more of a data guy than I am. But it's definitely one of those things where when it comes to returns on investments, it's something I look at very, very closely. Because at the end of the day, that's where your pot of gold goes.
Absolutely.
And if you can't monitor it, then there's no point in doing it. And like Simon made the point earlier, and to no offense of mine at all, but the location of Bermondsey is not a high street gym. It's a gym in a heavy residential area where there's great security, great lighting, and there's loads of homes. I mean, we have a third phase development going up across the street with 1,000 new homes in September 25, all sold out. And that's the sort of, as a group, that's what we look for. And the locations that we're looking for here, Richmond, wherever, we're looking at locations where we can come into heavy residential areas, because the day and age of people working out commercially is gone. So the day and age of them, doing spin classes for 35 minutes at lunchtime and then going back to work, showering in the office, and going back to work is gone. Unless you're working, one of those traditional jobs that still require continuous FaceTime, like banking or like being a solicitor in the square mile, it's not like that for everyone. So what they tend to do is they tend to go and work closer to home because it's convenience.
The biggest change in COVID was everybody going back to gyms near their homes because they were spending all their time working from home. Yeah. And even the big city clubs. I know a few people that have said the big city clubs are still struggling within that that square mile around there because people aren't in the offices. They're there maximum 3 days a week. So why would you join a gym there? You just have the one at home.
I mean, I won't go into names and stuff, but a gym that Simon cherished and that I did as well, in London Bridge, that Simon spent a portion of career at has gone. And that's a club that we would never expect to go on because it belongs to a conglomerate that has so many clubs in their portfolio. And when you look at where the club's placed, it's literally placed right next to the EY building, right next to all of these top law firms, and they still have all of these great partnerships. But
Aary, I'm really sorry. I have to say this. Ryan also worked at that club like 20 years before I did. Yeah.
Well, I worked for that business. I didn't work at that club, but I worked.
Did you know you literally based in that? Okay, it doesn't matter.
No, I was at Nottingham for that.
Ryan, I'm sorry. Well, then it's fine.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, Aary.
He knows exactly. It's not.
Yeah, but it's when you look at that, you think, goodness me, central location, prime location, what would happen? But at the end of the day, that's what's going on. I mean, one of the points as well, just while we were talking about the whole outreach and digital thing, that I think is valid here is this whole age of digitalization. We're going everywhere and we're seeing people being replaced by tablets. And although as a business person, that screams efficiency, it screams streamlining certain processes, it's difficult for a certain demographic. And naturally, it's the older demographic. And what we need to remember in our franchise and in our, as Anytime Fitness, is that demographic is still part of the audience that we're trying to capture. Yep. Those guys in their early 50s and who are not quite used to the adjustment, or even in their late 40s are not quite used to the adjustment. That's someone we still want to target. And that's when that human interaction, that face-to-face can never be replaced. And I think we will be doing pre-sales in 5 to 10 years. And I'll hand over to Simon because he's got a point. But in 5 to 10 years when we're doing pre-sales, I still think I'll be hiring a team. And I still want to say that they'll be going out there because that was, very effective, basically.
Don't ever go against that, though. No, Simon knows I'm not a big fan of the 24-hour no staff model. I'm not. I think we work in hospitality, we work in health and fitness, and with that comes the fact you're supposed to be supporting your clients and helping them achieve their goals and everything else.
To add on to that as well. Sorry, Simon, just 1 second, but I think marketing is such a dark art, and I think people don't understand it. Like, I've got a marketer who works for us in our group. And, she's great at what she does. She's amazing at what she does. When she starts talking about SEOs and this, that, and the other, I have no idea what's going on. I'm just like, I trust you. And she gets the results and I see what cost per leads are and it's all happy days. But also with the digital stuff, with this new audience, you have to be so careful because anything could set them the other way. So, when you have the face-to-face interaction, that's great. But when it comes to digitally, it could be, what are the questions that they asked? Where are they led? Are they going to a landing page? Are they not going to a landing page? What are they going to? What are the email correspondence, the text correspondence that they get following that? All of these equations that you have to put into how you keep them engaged. So I think good old-fashioned face-to-face can't really beat it.
No, absolutely not.
All I was going to add as well is that it does depend. So I think that having your marketing in alignment with your products is very, very important. Ryan, did you post about Jaguar the other day? We won't talk about it, but that's an example of getting it wrong.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, they've missed the mark.
Your audience are
it was me. Yeah,
you researched that. But anyway, but the point I'm trying to make is that with Anytime Fitness, one of the USPs is community. Right? It's all about, look, we do staff our gyms, we do provide that level of support. We are here to serve, as it were. So I think that having a marketing strategy that's consistent with that USP and with that message is really important, because if we're actually out on the street and we're talking to people, that's the personal touch that we claim to have. So if we're marketing through methods that don't include the personal touch, it's hypocritical, and it will switch off our target demographic. So don't get me wrong, there are no, we don't need to be about the bush here. Pure Gym is very, very, very successful. It's the largest operator in the UK. I wish I had some shares in Pure Gym, quite frankly, but it's not our preferred approach. It's not our preferred market, and we have to use a different strategy. And the digital prospects, I'll tell you this, every prospect that we speak to that doesn't remember inquiring, digital. There's no two ways about that. That is always.
I always find that funny, Simon. That you get someone's name, telephone number, email address. You ring them up and they go, "Oh, I can't remember doing that."
Right, I'll tell you what's really interesting about that. So I was getting frustrated by this, so I did a bit of digging. If someone inquires between 8 o'clock and midnight, forget it. They're just watching TV and scrolling and da-da-da-da. It's like the conversion rate on a prospect acquired between 8 o'clock and midnight is significantly lower than those in the morning.
Well, maybe it's half worth turning the ads off during that period then.
I don't
know. I know enough about marketing to tell you, unfortunately, Ryan, it doesn't work that way. You've got to have them go on for a couple of solid days to then have that effect. And even if there's a glitch in the system, or for example, God forbid, your bank card gets declined, then you got to start all over again, because that lead up is super, super important.
Well, one of my theories on this is that I think it's people who've just had their dinner and is lying on the couch and is feeling pretty lethargic and lazy and has that sudden burst of I need to go to the gym, and then they haven't forgotten, they just don't want to engage because that spark's gone. Which is why response time is really important, which is another Tima feature that I won't talk about right now. But and again, in terms of pre-sale, if these are what's it called, caught in the moment prospects, and you're calling them a month later, not going to happen, is it? I think that with everything, it has its place. I don't want to write it off completely, because I would advocate a hybrid, as I said. But the reality is that your outreach prospects have the potential to be of a much higher quality. They also have the potential to be completely made up. So we can't completely
as we saw. And like Simon said, we had a bad egg, and that's what we saw, and that ability to make things up, and we were very lucky we caught onto it very quickly. That's the positive of having good staff members, because when something like this happens, they come to you and they tell you, and that's exactly what happened with us. But I mean, God forbid, if we didn't know and that staff member was still here when we were calling out on the 28th, the 29th, and 30th of October, then this would be a very, very different story.
Absolutely. And just out of interest, obviously you've had a really long pre-sale because of all the delays and stuff like that. But I'm assuming you guys did the standard pre-sale in terms of build up the price point, build it up. Right, we have a launch day. Yeah. In terms of that, because as you're saying there, Simon, in terms of you've got to get onto these prospects really quickly. We can't leave them for a month before we contact. So what sort of things do you guys have in place, Simon or Aary, in terms of keep those prospects engaged to the point that you actually go live with the actual offer?
I thought that conversation was taking a very different turn. That's why me and Simon were smiling. I thought you were
sure we'll get to it, Aary.
This whole sort of yield
in pricing, Ryan. We need to discuss it.
Yeah, this whole yield versus percentage model, which I'm happy to have a chat about. But to answer your question directly, it's just we had a comms calendar, to keep it very simple. And so we have our CRM interface. We have Clubwise that we use, and anytime we use across the board, and I'm sure other people use as well. And we have the ability to send out marketing material from there, whether it be newsletters via email, text messages, and then monitor who clicks on and so on and so forth. And that's when, Simon's experience, I remember him and I sitting down for coffee and him going, try this at this time and try this at this time. And then, we try for the first couple of weeks, we send maybe 1 or 2 out more a week than we should, just to see how many click onto it. And then we can finally find that healthy groove. But we sat down together as a team, me, my general manager, and our marketer, and we sat down and went, we need to have a calendar of when we're sending things and how often we're sending things. And, Anytime Fitness as a head office said, one of the biggest points of key data that you need to take away from this is make sure you're reaching out to members. This is how many times you need to reach out to members with a newsletter for how well a club is currently doing. This is how often the clubs who aren't doing so well are reaching out to members, and the clubs, not surprisingly, who aren't doing incredibly well, are because they're never reaching out to members. And so what we said is we thought we'd be number one with OCD. So we went, well, these guys are doing it once or twice a month. Let's do it every 5 days. And we stuck that in there. And then Simon came along and went, you don't want to overkill either. So we dialed it down to 1 week. But that's
still pretty impressive throughout pre-sale to be communicating once a week with these guys, and I think that's an awesome job to be doing that.
Thanks, but I mean, look, we were unfortunately the rare occasion where it came back to bite us, because a lot of the times, after 6-8 weeks, people were going around and saying, "Hey, why don't you? When are you actually opening? Stop sending us what partnerships you've got lined up. When are you actually opening? We want to train." And so but no, I think doing it all again, when we do it all again very soon, and I'm sure we can have a conversation then about it. I think we'll be in a good position to replicate what we did now then.
And I guess I don't know, I can't remember club-wise and how it works, but a lot of this stuff could be automated quite simply in terms of goes out on a certain date. I do a lot of automations with clubs. That's the only reason I say Aary. But you can potentially have it all set up from an automation point of view and even take more pressure off you guys. I'm sure. I know they're doing loads of rebuilds with Clubwise, but I'm sure it's got that ability.
I'd love to do that. Unfortunately, not at the current moment. Unfortunately, we had to send everything out in the moment, which is not always ideal. I automate emails when I'm typing them at 3 a.m. to send at 8 a.m. so I don't look like a weirdo. But unless it's Simon, I just hit send at that point. I wish they did, but I think as you said, there's being money pummeled into them, and I'm sure there'll be some upgrades like that in the near future.
Yeah, I was speaking to Guy, and I know things are coming. I sent him some information. We were talking about it, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. But most of the CRMs now have that ability to do the automation, so it's only an upgrade for those guys. But if you can have that, but the fact that you had it manned and you're having things going out, even if it's things that, because I always say to clubs, it doesn't actually have to be about the club. It can be I create things like ebooks for clients. And everything from recipe books to healthy living and all it's there for is to have someone look at it. Oh, that's quite an interesting read, even if they only read page 1. It's still got your logo all over it. It's still a nice thing to get. And the great thing as well is what you don't want, and Simon will obviously tell you this as well. It doesn't matter what field you work in. If you're constantly selling to someone, it will turn them off, especially in Britain. Britain hates being sold to.
Yeah.
Just it's not in our nature to be sold to. So if you can do it in a more subtle way, and I thought you might enjoy this read, healthy habits guide or a nutrition guide or whatever it is. And now, but it's your brand going out all the time. So when they think about joining a club, when your offer hits, you'll be the one they're looking for. So it doesn't always have to be a sales message or this is our build of the club or whatever. Yes, get them in there, but also have some other stuff that's going out that's just a nice read that they can share. This was really, it works really well. I mean, we use the ebooks with clients when I'm doing some of the digital stuff, and from an organic point of view, it drives. The leads aren't as strong as probably what they would be through an ad as such, because you're getting people that are downloading the ebook, not necessarily interested in membership, but you're putting yourself out there. The awareness for your business grows because people are seeing your message a lot more. So it's definitely worth doing those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think on the member comms, just very, very quickly, just to be fair to Clubwise, you can schedule campaigns in advance, and there is an active CRM for once the club opens. The shortcoming at the moment in pre-sale is that you can't schedule like follow-up or responses, or you can't create a workflow, as it were. But I think, and this is something I talk to clubs about a lot, and it's interesting really, because obviously with Tima and with the way I manage the business and my time and all the rest of it, I have to tread that fine line between don't want to get involved too early in a pre-sale, because how do I put it? We just don't need to be involved that early. We don't really need to be involved into the later stages. And certainly most franchisees, quite rightly, won't want to pay any Tima fees until the work is really necessary. But with all my clients, I always say, look, regardless of the billing date, as in when you start billing us, as soon as you sign the agreement with us, I want to spend an hour with you every week, even if it ends up being 10 or 12 weeks prior to launch. Because from my perspective, again, if we get given a pile of prospects that are just dead, and it's me who's going to get it in the neck for not converting. So in my own self-interest, I want to make sure that the client is taking all the right steps to ensure that we get given at least a lukewarm part of the prospects. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I also say to my clients, look, those guys are going to self-convert. Don't give them to us because you don't need to. They'll convert themselves. And that's just doubling down on something you don't need to double down on. I'd rather you gave me the sort of middle ground where it's worth investing extra resource in converting, but not the extreme at either end. And it's interesting you guys talking about the member comms, because I remember saying to Aary, guys, you need to cool down a little bit because your read rate is dropping. So Clubwise does let you look at open, read, and click through. And you could see the percentages were dropping. And the other thing that's scary is the unsubscribe button, right? So if you're getting your prospects to unsubscribe prior to the message that really counts, then that can be counterproductive. But look, it's a really, really hard balance to strike. And again, this is where that alignment comes in terms of if you have something okay, so firstly, if you've got nothing to say, create something to say. Like you said, Ryan, ebooks, organic nurturing, this is how much water you should drink. These are the 7 tips of diet and nutrition. This is a great, workout library. You can look at whatever, or create some content by going and doing a boot camp in your local park, or whichever. But the thing I often say to club managers, in particular during a pre-sale, is you have to understand, guys, the stuff that excites you doesn't necessarily excite the prospect. So the fact that they're like painting the wall, no one cares. You have to be very careful about that, because for you and I, it's really exciting because we know that is the first step in many steps that's going to look like this at the end of it. But the prospects, you have to see the world through the prospect's eyes. And one thing I've been advocating as well, and part of the chat I had with Matt, the new openings manager last week, was, look, we need to start categorizing these prospects earlier and market to them according to the category they're in. So, if you've got some students who, I don't know, this is so generic and stereotypical, but this is business, you have to do these things. But if you're targeting a young market, then, do send them information about the 2-for-1 cocktail you can get with your key for whatever. Again, I know I'm using a stereotype, but that's how you do it. Whereas if it is the older crowd, and actually, so one of our clients sends out a guide to the menopause as an ebook for free to their prospects, and I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant, fantastic, because it's so targeted. Obviously, it's women of a certain age, and one of the problems we've had with the Anytime pre-sales this year is that you send the same newsletter to all 2, 3, 4,000 prospects, and of course 50% of the group care, 50% don't. And finding something that's universal is very difficult. But if you started to categorize your prospects and treat them accordingly, and even, and I said this to Matt as well, if we could have some kind of heat check on a prospect, and if it drops to a certain temperature, okay, cool, hit them with a communication. But if they are at a certain temperature, don't, because actually they're already engaged. Don't risk switching them off, if that makes sense. So you can do that by the age of prospect. So if a prospect reaches 3 weeks, send them something. Figure something out, send it to them. If they inquired yesterday, you don't need to send them something today. But the problem we've got at the moment is it has to be broad strokes. There are ways of doing it. You can categorize your prospects. It's just that people don't at the moment. So
most systems work on with tags and stuff now, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. No. And Clubwise does the same thing. You can tag your prospects, but of course, it's just such a manual process at the moment that there's an opportunity to develop there. For the record, I'm also talking to Clubwise about what my thoughts would be on how to develop the platform in terms of getting the best efficiency from it. Because I do think, again, cutting through the noise. Look, people complain about targeted ads, and I personally turn all my cookies off and I block it all and the rest of it. But the reality is, it's nice to be targeted with something that you're actually interested in, as opposed to, do you like this? It's targeting is, again, I personally have issues with sharing my data with the rest of it, but generally speaking, the better you can target, the better your conversion rate is going to be, the better the engagement. And again, I think that there is same as the prospecting, and I know it's a boring answer, but I think absolutely communicate with your prospects before selling to them, but don't do it too much. And when you are doing it, make sure it's relevant to them. And if you can do it in a targeted way, do it in a targeted way.
Perfect. Now, there's probably one big thing I'd like to ask you, Aary, because obviously you've now got another club coming quite soon. I'm sure it wasn't supposed to be so close together, but obviously you said you got Richmond, which is on its way soon. Is there anything that you've gone through this time around that you like? Other than obviously the floods and those sorts of things, but is there anything you'd go, okay, I think we'd do that differently?
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, I think the biggest thing to me, obviously, that stands out, apart from the little things like not having the current bin provider I've got, goodness me, I need to get a new one. But it would be things like, when we hire the team, naturally, because of the delays that we've had, but also how long we showcase the gym post-opening. I think that's super important. I think we shouldn't take the emphasis off, as soon as we've got the gym open, why don't we just open? Or as soon as, let me rephrase that. As soon as we've got the gym kitted out and finished, why don't we then just open? I think if we delay those opening at the moment, we delayed it for a week. I think even if we push that to 2-3 weeks, we can't take the emphasis off how important that time period was for us, doing those tours and getting those members who, I guess you could say, were naysayers and were the ones who were like,
you're almost creating excitement by giving them a first look at the club, aren't you? And
absolutely. And I think we couldn't put enough emphasis on that. And obviously you're naturally going to have things like no-shows, and that just happens. I think there was this stat that got thrown at me the other day that 1 in 8 people will attend the gym tour. And to most people, that's like, oh, well, if you've got 16 slots in a day, that means only 2 people are going to turn up. And then my brain just went, well, why don't you just have 8 slots for each half an hour? And we did that in the last 3 days, and suddenly everyone's turning up because one of those are turning up in every time slot, and the conversion just flew through the roof. And so that's what I do. I think I'd have the gym open for a little while longer with no one in it, get as much marketing material as we can out of it, but more importantly, allow everyone who didn't buy a membership because they wanted to see the gym to come in and do that. And the second thing would just be to hire that team, I guess, when construction starts. Let construction start and go ahead and hire the team rather than when the lease signs and then you get the team in. So those are the two big ones. But everything from a pre-sale point of view, everything. And one of the stats I want to throw at you as well was the whole, in Anytime Fitness, we tend to have 7 cases in which someone needs to see you to then register with you. And so that's what we did, whether that be a banner being number 1, the boot camp being number 2, running into one of us being number 3 on the iPhone, or on Instagram being number 4, and then getting the 3 others from somewhere else. I think we'd keep all of that the same, and it would just be to definitely to hire the team at the right moment, and then have the gym sit there a little bit to marinate, and have everyone walk through the door.
I tell you what's interesting. I watched the guy in America, and I don't know how different it is over here, and he consults clubs, people like Anytime and stuff like that, and he reckoned the contact points now before someone joins can be up to 28. Because it was always 7 when I started all those 25 years ago, but he says it's got more and more and more, and he says the touch. Obviously, we've got the technology to deliver that 28 now. It doesn't all have to. I mean, when I started, it was telephone call or text, and even SMS, to be fair, was probably quite new. Sorry, Simon, you're not as old as me, but even SMS wasn't really we were still sending out letters, posting them, franking them, sending out actual letters to people, and 28 contact points now, and it's so it just goes to show, to get someone to react, don't give up after the 5th call or whatever.
No, absolutely.
You've got the opportunity to keep going, keep sending the emails, the texts, and whatever. Yes, there's a point where you've got to stop, but it's it might not be that 7.
Absolutely. And I think just now speaking to you, just thinking of one more thing, I think one thing that I have learned, and it was funny because we never operated like this in our nursery business, and suddenly with the gyms, one person said it to me. It was actually Matt, the pre-openings manager, who said it to me, and I went and saw this frantic, nervous breakdown where I was doing things like this. Is the one thing that I've learned is people are not as price sensitive as you think. You might want to go ahead and have that fair share of people who, now that we've spoken the name Pure Gym, we might as well say it, who want to go to Pure Gym. But what's very, very different, like Simon said earlier, is we're a community gym. And that's why there are boots on the ground. That's why we are slightly more expensive. And you pay for that quality. Or you can go to a gym where a 16-year-old's bench pressing and won't give up the bench for 45 minutes. That's your choice.
And not just that. Contracts are the same. There's so many gym owners that are scared to death of putting a contract in their club. But the moment you do, nobody balks at it. It's very rare for someone, I'm not joining because of a contract. 100%. Now, if you've changed your team effectively, you can overcome a contract in the same way you can overcome anything else. And the fact that, I don't know whether there's any club. I mean, some of the clubs Anytime Fitness shorten their contracts, don't they? Some of them are 6 months and whatever. But as a general rule, most of them are 12 months. And nobody's not joining because of the contract in there, and the benefits it gives you as a club with added retention. You've got VAT benefits, all the good things it brings you a contract. But it's like anything in sales, Aary, you've got to have the balls to stand there and go, that's how we do business. This 100%. Is us. This is how we do it. This is how it works. I'm not apologising for having a contract.
I think you're so right, and I think one of the first lessons that I was taught actually by my mother of all people is well, I say by all people. Simon's actually met her because she comes everywhere with me when we go to openings. She loves the environment because it's so much better than the nursery environment. But she basically told me when I went into this, you're not running a charity. We had parents who basically wouldn't get a month of funding, and we were like, let's charge them a funded price. And she was like, no, we're not running a charity, because at the end of the day, when you have those rolling month-to-month contracts and people are disappearing because they don't want to finish off their 12 months and you've got 5 months left of that 12-month contract, you're not a charity. You're the one who's going to take the hit, and it's your families at home who aren't going to eat. So you need to remember that when you're going into things like this, and don't be scared of the contracts. That's why you're in Anytime Fitness.
The one thing I find, Aary, with fitness, and obviously I've been in it 25 years, so I've seen quite a lot of different businesses. Because it's someone else's leisure time.
Yeah,
they almost treat the business, so your members will treat you not as a business. And it's a really weird thing to say, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them see you as their leisure time. So it's, of course you can do that for me. Yeah, you can let my friend in free. Yeah, you can. And it's like, no, it's a business. You can't go to Tesco's and say, I want 50% off that bread because I want it. It doesn't work like that. They're a business in the same way you guys are. And I think if you can hold your ground in terms of this is what we deliver, this is what we are, I think it gives you far more credibility than when you start negotiating and stuff. A lot of independent clubs struggle with that because they'll have someone coming in, doing mate's deal here, and I'm desperate for the memberships. I'll do this and that, and it actually ends up backfiring on them. That's the that's the problem. Stand by your principles.
Yeah, it's so funny. I think we can use this as a bit of a segue into volume versus yield, which is a bit of an internal debate amongst myself and Matt, Anytime Fitness, because we so for years and years and years, the model at Anytime was fixed rates, discounted rates during pre-sale, your early bird specials. Tier 1 was your lowest price, Tier 2 your second lowest, Tier 3 your third lowest, and then you go to a little bit below headline for the rest of the pre-sale. But what was introduced about a year ago, possibly 2 years ago, was a % discount for a set period of time. So 50% off for the first 3 months, for example. And the idea is of the second option is that it takes the pressure off volume, because if you have you don't sell as many as you'd hope during pre-sale, that's massively mitigated by the fact by month 4 everyone's paying headline rate. But of course, the problem is they're harder to sell because at the end of the day, the price tag is higher, and that's what people see. And I've worked with, we've opened 9 Anytime Fitness in the last year. And there's a complete blend of different models. Some people did a bit of both. Some people did only the fixed rates. Some people did only the % reduction, all the rest of it. And that relationship between how many you've sold and what they're paying. Look, obviously, this is a bit crass, but this is the reality of the business. You need your DD to be at a certain point by a certain time where you're in trouble, right? And there's 2 ways of doing it. You sell a load. So, and again, the owner won't mind me saying this, but in Brixton, we took it to the extreme of, look, we know this is too cheap, but we're going to sell a lot of these, which we did. And then Ary's probably the other extreme, if you won't mind me saying, is that he could have sold 30% more had he had stuck to his lowest rate, but he decided to increase the rate. And again, I think that, so Ary's club is the highest yield club that we've done. So, he has the highest average membership fee of any. In fact, that's not just that we've done, Aary. I don't know if you know this, but this is across the openings this year in Anytime Fitness. Matt and I looked at it, and that's confirmed, which again speaks to Ary's confidence in his product and confidence in his team, because ultimately we still had a really good pre-sale. And if you look at the yield versus volume, it's one of the healthiest. Now, it's not quite Brixton, because Brixton was a bit of a superstar and a bit of an anomaly. That won't happen again. Hasn't happened before, probably won't happen again. Perfect storm of different factors. But I am very, very interested in this, because I also think there's something to be said to not just what you're telling your market, but also what you're telling your team, in terms of, look, this is a quality product. Yes, we are going to charge full price for it. And if you don't believe it's worth it, you shouldn't be working here, which is something I used to say to my team all the time. I mean, my club manager used to call me up all the time. Si, give me the fob fee off. Si, give me 50. I'm like, no, if you can't sell it because you don't believe in it, go and work somewhere else. That's the reality of this. I say it to my personal trainers all the time as well. So many personal trainers, great trainers, but are afraid to ask for 50 quid an hour. I'm like, look, if you're not worth it, don't charge it. Are you worth it or not? Simple as. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it really does come down to that. And obviously there are market forces at play. And what's really interesting about Pure Gym and the Gym Group, and again, I know I shouldn't be naming competitors, but this is a agnostic podcast. We rate from all suppliers and operators, all the rest of it. The interesting thing about them is that they have created this new category of gym, this new category of market, all the rest of it. And actually, I think in some ways, and look, don't get me wrong, they're a tough competitor. I don't want to belittle the challenge that clubs face when they have them. But I always found in Twickenham, look, there's your option A, David Lloyd, 200 quid a month. You get a massage while you're training. Great, happy days. If you can be there for 10 hours a day, absolutely worth it. There's the Gym Group, full of students, 20 quid a month. Good luck getting on the treadmill, but there's your choice. Or there's option C, which is us. And I think it's quite nice. And look, from an industry holistic perspective, we're catering to more people, which is great. Yeah. But if you know what your product is, where you sit in the market, stick to it. Just stick to it. If you've got it wrong, you've got it wrong. Nothing you do is going to fix that. If you've put a super expensive club in a deprived area, well, shame on you. That was just a stupid thing to do, But if you've got your demographic right and you understand your audience and you understand your product, then you're in a good place and you need to stick to it. So I'm a huge believer in. It's so funny because when Ary's calling me right middle of the priest. Should I put my price up? I put my price up, and the non-Tima part of my brain saying, "Yeah, do it, go for it." But the Tima part of my brain saying, "Bro, I've got numbers to think about." Like, just. But
it's great to be in that position.
I love it because I put the phone down and he's like, "Yeah, he's not putting the price up," and then 5 minutes later, the price goes up. So I'm not the best client to work for. To be
Larry, you did the right thing. In hindsight, you completely did the right thing.
And look, it brings me back. Yeah, so no, go for it. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, because if you do the math on it, it's quite straightforward. Yes, we would have sold 20% more memberships, but the lower yield and the increased risk annualization, it doesn't balance the books. Now, had your run rate had dropped a certain amount, then it would have been a mistake, but it didn't. It stayed at a healthy enough number that it was great. And the other thing I would say as well is, and we had this with, I won't name other clubs, but we've had this with a couple of other clients who frankly just couldn't sell during the pre-sale because their market was so dependent on the actual product and the tangible difference between option A and option B that they just struggled to gain any traction until they had a club to tour. But the good thing about going to your near headline rate before you open is that your staff are in the mindset of selling memberships at that price. Whereas with other clubs that we've worked with, because the jump from what was available on Monday to what was available on Tuesday when we opened was quite significant, they just didn't sell anything for 2 weeks. Because A, they completely blew out their entire prospect database because their expectations been set here. And B, their staff just weren't used to selling at that rate and selling at that price and justifying that price. So actually, I think from a transition perspective, looking at Bermondsey, same as always, Aary said it at the start, he and I are both very critical thinkers. We always look at what we can do better next time. So yes, there were some things we could have done better, but I think that particular call was the right one in hindsight. And I'm not just saying it's on a podcast. Had it gone wrong, I'd have been saying I was right, but you were right. So, it worked out really well.
Could it be interesting to see how that goes at Richmond though? Because you might find for whatever reason, it doesn't work in the same way and you have to keep the price.
Yeah, look, I mean, if it had gone wrong, I wouldn't be on this podcast, and but just before I talk about that, I think, and the price and versus yield and the percentage, I think just pick up on a really quick point that Simon said before about this whole weathering that perfect. I think having a high operator or high, price operator and a low price operator, or typically a premium club and a budget club, and then an anytime going, and I think that's the perfect storm. And I think what it allows you to do, like Simon says, and I would never dare to say that Simon's clubs in Anytime Fitness were successful because of that. I'm sure he brought much more to the table, but those were one of the big factors. And that's what we have at Bermondsey. And I would be, lying to you if I said otherwise. We've got a big operator. We've got F45 across the street. I'm going to name people now. And then you've got a Pure Gym 20 minutes away. And what you've got is those two clubs. And we go, well, actually, you've got one which is class-based that's open from 8 to 4. God knows why they're open from 8 to 4. And then you've got Pure Gym, which is a 20-minute walk away in Bermondsey, which is quite far. And that's open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Or you come to us in the middle where 20 quid more a month, but what you get is you get this incredible premium space. You're never waiting for a machine, and you get to go into the vanity area and there's a Dyson hairdryer there that doesn't get robbed every day. So you're very, we're that perfect middle market. And I think what's great about the price model, I think Simon just got the joke. I think what's great about the price model is that we went in and I think people get very hung up over, what the price is, and this is your headline rate, and either we're going to go a little bit below it or we're going to completely discount it, and that's the percentage model. If you told your team you were selling at 80 quid a month and your opening was 50, but only you knew you'd stay at 50 forever, I mean, that's a yield at the end of the day. So it gets really confusing and wordy with it. What we did is we basically just turned around and said, we need the members. We need the members from day one. We're not willing to take the hit financially. Within our group, we need to see those returns quickly. If you're happy to weather that storm for the first 3, 4, 6 months, depending on how long you give someone a 50% discount on your headline rate for, then go for it. But if you're not, and you have things like us where we're trying to have a quick trajectory into the next one, and our strategy is to keep growing the brand, because we've put the nurseries on the back burner because Anytime Fitness is the future for us and we're really looking forward to it, then we've got to go with the yield. My point being earlier that what I would have done differently is I wouldn't have been so price sensitive when my members weren't price sensitive, which means that if we were at $54.99 and the first yield was advised to be 38, but I actually wanted it to be 42, I should have probably stuck to my gun and just done 42. Because that 38 yield that we sold for that day, we sold 120 that day. That 42 the next day was 300 plus sales. So I mean, and then we went to 45 and we went onwards and onwards. So yeah.
I was going to say that it's really interesting that so I do a multivariate analysis on conversion post selling effectively and try and figure out what the biggest determining factor was in whether or not someone joined. And again, the 9 sites we've done this year, it's never been price. That's never been the overwhelming determining factor. So the amount of times that we've had a higher conversion rate at a higher price, basically because the quality pool of the prospect pool was better. And more often than not, and again, I'm not just saying this, but genuinely, if the Tima call success rate is higher in a certain pool, i.e. more people have actually been spoken to, that also drives. So what it speaks to is that if you have the right prospect and they get the right message, then price becomes not irrelevant. I don't want to be like an idiot. Clearly, price has its relevancy, but it wasn't a significant factor in any of the pre-sales that we've done. And also, I would suggest that there are more, this is a little bit anecdotal, but I've got more franchisees who regret starting lower. I don't know if you've got any franchisees that regret starting too high, if that makes sense.
It's the same argument as to why I work with clubs, Aary, and I advocate to have the price go up every year. I'm not a big fan of these guys who no, your price will stay the same and everything out, and hope that they leave, and then you catch you on the next price. No. Just do it every year. It doesn't have to be a £10 every year. You do it by £1 or £2 every single year. Client doesn't notice the difference, and suddenly you guys are generating. If you've got 2,000 members, you've suddenly generated £4,000 a month into your business, for £50,000 a year.
And look, I have a point to that because I'm very lucky where I have businesses that sit on both ends of the spectrum. I've got a business where you have a small yield increase on a higher quantity. I've got another one where you've got a lower quantity but a significant higher yield increase. And it's something that I tell my team all the time. Or I definitely told our club manager Danny when we started off. I said, you're not selling something which requires a large portion of someone's disposable income. The amount of times I'm sure we've all in this chat now have had. I mean, I sure have had when I was at Buzz Gym in Slough. I mean, that was 15 quid a month when I went to school in Slough, and I probably paid that for 2 years and didn't go once. But it was such a small. How that could have been small to me at 16 years old, I don't know. But how that was such a small part of income wise that it was just non-avoidable. Now thinking about a 35-year-old male who has 3 times or 4 times that income and letting him pay, they definitely don't care. But when it comes to the nurseries and we're doing our 15-minute show rounds because we're having young parents or parents for the first time or parents with multiple children coming in, and we're trying to sell them, our lowest fee is 1.5k a month. So we're trying to sell them something that's substantially more of a chunk of change of their pocket.
And for some people, that's one of the person's salary. I remember my
absolutely. Yeah.
My ex-wife, when we were together, she stayed at home and got a part-time job because it just wasn't worth us paying all the childcare.
100%. And I think it's just become so difficult now with childcare. And I know that's a whole completely different topic, but my point being on the yield is that me increasing there is more difficult than me increasing here, but we still do it every year. It could be £5 there, or it could be 50p more a day. But with the gyms, we're definitely increasing because it's just something you need to do. Your costs go up. Why would you not? Why would
the members shouldn't get into a habit, because if that happens, when you do a price increase, because you're suddenly now realizing you're having to be a significant one, and that's when you upset the members. When it's a nice gradual, no one bats an eyelid, no one ever loses more members than the increase. And so it's just not worth not doing. You just do it as a part and parcel.
Ryan, I had a chat on exactly this topic with one of our clients that has a mature site. Excuse me, because one of the questions I always ask is, when did you last do a price increase? Because it's quite an easy win for Tima, because we're like, look, we'll smooth that transition, we'll talk to the members, it'll be fine, just do it. But I quoted something that you'd posted on LinkedIn a few months ago, which was looking at, it was a bit of an industry status report, and it was looking at the increase of average gym cost versus the increase of average gym membership fee. I think you mainly correct this. I mean, obviously you post a lot of stuff, you might not remember, but I think the cost base had gone up by 20% and the membership fee had gone up by like 4%. And it was like, and you put one of your Y's with the question marks on the imagery. I remember reading that, being like, it's so true. Like, obviously I've been in the industry for 15 years now. And we're terrified of increasing our prices. And I understand that some people are fearful of, it's a luxury item, it'll be the first thing to go to. I get all of that, but no, like, again, so I would point out Nuffield, who I'm a member of, like you said, Ryan, they increase the fee every year. It just happens. It's a quid. I don't even bat an eyelid or think twice about it. And that's the way to do it. You just do it gradually, rather than being like, oh my God, we're screwed, put the rate up by 10 quid. And then you're in a bad place. But I think that generally there's this fear. And look, I've only been exposed to a small portion of the industry, but that's increased quite significantly over the last couple of years. And it seems to be fairly universally true that people are afraid of putting their price up. Interestingly enough, they're not afraid to do it for new joiners, if that makes sense. But they are afraid to do it for their existing members, which in my eyes is so backwards, because it's like those guys are the ones who should want to pay more because they're here and they're happy and all the rest of it. Whereas you're trying to sell those, that's harder. But yeah, it's a weird hang up that the industry has. And again, it's so justified. So I've got clients who they do it at the drop of a hat. As soon as their electricity bill goes up, bang, membership rate goes up. They just keep it totally proportionate. And again, it's so easy to justify. And again, it comes back to what we were saying earlier. If you don't think it's worth it, don't charge it. And if you don't think it's worth it, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so. Again, the reason that I had this sort of split personality and Aary and I had that call is because part of my brain was saying, you go, dude, that's right. You charge more, you're worth more. You charge what you think you're worth, all the rest of it. And then the other part of me was, but I think having.
You'll always find your natural place as to what people, you know what I mean? You put the price up and it starts to become really difficult. You've reached your natural price limit, but
the
very few gyms are like that.
This is in Twickenham. So I think, Aary, you said you were absolutely right. Sorry, Ryan said it. So yes, I'm a good operator, but yes, I'm also very good at selecting sites. You have to be in the right place at the right time. It really helps. And again, being that middle offering is so ideal, particularly for the quality of a David Lloyd, but the convenience of a pure gym. Bang, easy sale, right? But in Twickenham, we played with our prices a lot because it depended on our competitors, it depended on COVID, it depended on our own costs, all the rest of it. And it fluctuated. But I remember, I'll never forget this. We were charging, this is back in 2015. No, sorry, bloody hell, 2013. We were charging £35 a month, right? And we did that for years and years and years. And we said, we're going to increase it to 36. And we did, not a bad line. We were like, oh my God, 37, not a bad line. 38, not a bad line. 39, not a bad line. We got to 42 quid a month. I swear on my life, it's true, right? We got to 42 quid a month in a year. And we just sat there being like, we've lost 7 quid a month from every member for 5 years. That's how we felt. We were shocked. We were so, we kicked ourselves so hard for being so afraid of being brave effectively and letting fear ride our. Look, part of it is, you also want to do right by the members and you feel whatever, but there's, and it's interesting as well, Ryan, you were saying earlier about how our members treat gym like it's a casual thing, not a business arrangement. You wouldn't phone your bank and be like, oh, I haven't been in my house for the last 2 weeks and I get a 20% reduction on my mortgage. Like, you just wouldn't do it. You wouldn't even think of it. But because there's this sort of personal relationship between a gym and its members, there's that attitude, and it works both ways. So, members feel like they can ask for whatever they want, and operators feel like they're obliged to bend over backwards. And I was, again, to come back to the chat I was having with this client, I was saying, look, at the end of the day, if you're not charging the right amount, your gym's going to close, and then no one's happy, right? Yeah. So, you want to keep your members happy, keep the gym open. You know what I mean? These guys depend on going to the gym, and they depend on your classes and your personal trainers and your equipment. So if you're undercharging and the gym's shut in 6 months' time, which I've seen happen, then who are you helping then? Not to mention the fact that you've got to I don't know, sell your car or whatever. So yeah, there are business realities all of this. Look, your mum actually said to me, I haven't told you this, but when I was at the pre-launch a couple of weeks ago, she was saying to me, she was talking about pricing and all the rest of it, and she was saying, you've got a balance being kind of being greedy. I may be paraphrasing slightly, we'd had a couple of drinks, but it was something like that. Me, not your mum. Your mum was lovely, but
she can handle the things.
Anyway, but yeah, it's that balance between being kind and being greedy. You have to do a little bit of both, I think.
Absolutely.
So that was a bit of a rant.
Comes out with these little lines of wisdom. So
well, she sounds an awesome person, your mum. And on that, I think on that note, Aary, we're gonna leave it there because it's we've had so much of your time now. Firstly, I want to wish you luck with Bermondsey and obviously Richmond if we don't talk again. But it sounds like you've had an awesome experience, which is great. It's nice to see clubs that have started well and look like they're going to have a bright future. So I'm really happy for you, and it's been awesome having you on because it's also nice to get people that aren't from our industry to come on and give their experiences, because obviously a lot of the people we speak to are fitness people and they're fitness through and through and everything else, and you bring a unique slant on it because you're coming from a completely different background. But still see fitness as a business going forward, which is great.
Thanks, man. No, thank you for having me on. It was great to be on.
No, absolute pleasure. So, if anybody does want to get in touch with Aary, and are you on LinkedIn, Aary?
I am indeed. Yeah.
So just find Aary on LinkedIn. If you want to hear more of his experience, you're more than I'm sure he'll happily have a chat with you if you reach out to him. Otherwise, good luck. Thank you very much for coming on, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon. And thanks again, Simon.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Ryan.